In the year 2044, the world has been gripped by an energy crisis from the depletion of fossil fuels and the consequences of global warming, causing widespread social problems and economic stagnation. To escape the decline their world is facing, people turn to the Oasis, a virtual reality simulator, accessible by players using visors and haptic technology. It was created by James Holliday, who, when he died, had announced in his will to the public that he had left an Easter egg inside the Oasis, and the first person to find it would inherit his entire fortune and the corporation. The story follows the adventures of Wade Watts as he attempts to find the treasure. Aloha! This is Trinidad, your island man, coming to you live once again from beautiful Hawaii, here on the island of Oahu, giving you the best book reviews on the entire island of Oahu. Alright, yes, this is Trinidad, the island man, your island man, and yes, today it's not a movie review, but I just finished a really great book that I'd heard so much hype about, especially since it has a future movie coming out based on the book, directed by Steven Spielberg. And yes, I'm talking about Ready Player One. Now, this book came out in 2011 by Ernest Cline, and that year that it came out, it won a Alex Award from the Youth Library, and then eventually, the following year, a Prometheus Award. And honestly, I hadn't heard of this book again until just this year, when people were starting to talk about, the hype of, an upcoming potential movie. And I said, well, I'm kind of interested in that movie. It's like, everybody's talking about it. I really hadn't heard too much of what the movie would be about, other than it was based on this book, Ready Player One, and kind of set in the 80s and referenced a lot of 80s, culture, I guess. And so, being a child of the 80s, I was very intrigued. And, since the movie's coming out in 2018, directed by Steven Spielberg, I said, you know what, I can't wait. I want to go ahead and I want to know what this is about. And so I went ahead and I went to the library and I checked out the book. I checked out the audio book. I'm kind of busy. I don't really have time to sit down and read. I do, but, it's much easier to go ahead and get the audio book. And I'm very happy that I did. It was narrated by Will Wheaton from Star Trek The Next Generation, Wesley Crusher. And he's even actually referenced slightly in the book because he is of that era and that generation. So let me just tell you about what this book is about, what the potential movie is about, and what my fears about it may be. So remember our rating scale: Shaka thumbs up. It's good to go ahead and read or listen to. Shaka thumbs down. It's junk. I don't recommend listening to it or reading the book. And, well, for Ready Player One, it is a strong Shaka thumbs up. This is definitely one of the best books that, I've had the privilege of, checking out and listening to or reading. And it was fabulous. It is set in the year 2044, kind of a dystopian future. I'm a fan of science fiction, a little bit of a fan of fantasy, but I lean more towards science fiction. And so a dystopian future 2044 world where the Earth's resources have diminished to the point that, it's getting hard for people to survive on the Earth. The haves have pretty much all of it, and the have-nots, have whatever's left. And there's far a greater majority of the have-nots. Again, fuel is at a premium, natural resources. The beauty of the land has been decimated. There's really not much, here left on the earth in this book in 2044. And so what has happened is technology has replaced that, or at least stepped up and, given people an escape from their everyday drudge of their lives via virtual reality. Now, in this, they call it the Oasis, but essentially, it's the Matrix, like in the Matrix movies. William Gibson would have called it the Net back in Neuromancer. So it's kind of a cyberpunk-ish future in that respect. Of both the Matrix and Neuromancer. Whereas people check out of reality into a virtual reality in this one called The Oasis. And let me just say it's a fabulous book. It starts off, you're focused on one main character, Wade Watts, who is a high school student, a year from graduation. Going to public school in the virtual reality of the Oasis after having gained access to it and being accepted to one of the virtual schools because public schools he really had no interest in, and so he was fortunate enough to get in that. But apparently what takes place is that this virtual reality is shaped by, it was created by a person who grew up in the 80s, and was very shaped, by the fond memories of the 80s. So it has a lot of references. It has a lot of the music, has a lot of the styles, what people used to do back then for fun, especially geek and nerd culture at the time, like D&D, role-playing games, video games. We're talking Pac-Man, Tempest, Joust, you name it. It's all there. All referenced in this book, along with 80s movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink. It's all along kind of like a, John Hughes kind of movie, kind of like Spider-Man Homecoming in that respect, in that feel. So it still feels very much like the 80s in this movie. But essentially, what happens is the creator of the Oasis, this virtual reality, a trillionaire, goes ahead and dies. And he leaves his fame, he leaves his fortune and entire, the entire future of this virtual reality, the Oasis, his company, to whoever can solve a particular game within this alternate virtual reality of the Oasis. And so Wade Watts, this high school student, along with almost nearly everyone on the planet, goes off into this virtual world to attempt to find clues to where this prize is in there. You have to solve a series of riddles, a series of tests of skill, of knowledge, everything, encompassing both the 80s and this creator of the Oasis's, life, pretty much, and how he grew up and what development. You got to get into his mind and figure out what he was doing and where he could have hid this secret Easter egg, they call it, in the book, and find out where it is, solve whatever task needs to be solved, and obtain it. And now, along with the competition against everyone else in the world, there is an evil corporation that wants to seize control of the Oasis, this virtual reality, who has mostly gained much of the control of the actual reality, real world, and wants to take away what little freedoms people have in this virtual world as well, and charge an arm and a leg, basically make it, for the haves only, and excluding the have-nots, whereas almost everyone is equal in the Oasis. So, you know, that's the gist of the story. A large corporation intent on taking over and causing a dictatorship in a new free world of the virtual reality of the Oasis, all pitted against, you know, a normal high school student. Yes, it does ring a little bit like Spider-Man Homecoming, and very much it should, because this is almost the basis of every 80s movie there was, you know. Average, normal high school student, person, young adult, goes ahead and is set by some task, some great duty, you know, to do what seems like the impossible and attempt to overcome against crazy odds. So yes, this is a strong shock of thumb up for Ready Player One. If you liked, you know, science fiction, if you liked The Matrix, there's plenty of it in this book. So definitely check it out. You know, if you don't feel like reading it, do what I did and check out the audiobook, you know, or better yet, go ahead and buy the book. It's fabulous. I'm actually thinking about going ahead and going out and buying the book, or maybe off of Amazon now that I've read it. So that's how good it is. You know, you read it at the library for free, and it's like, hey, this is so good, I want to add it to my own personal library and read it again in the future. It's fabulous. And I can't wait for the movie, but also I'm a little afraid. Now I'm going to go into the movie now, or at least, you know, there's no news in the movie. Steven Spielberg has been assigned to direct this movie since 2015. It's slated to come out in 2018. And just like I said, the scope of this is going to be so huge and tremendous. I could see why they wanted a Steven Spielberg behind this, just because of his, you know, gravitas. He'd be able to go ahead and do this movie the way he wanted to do it, the way he feels it should be done. Now, that being said, and he is a great director, Steven Spielberg, you know, Indiana Jones, 1, 2, and 3 were great, you know, Poltergeist, E.T., you name it. You know, no one can deny that he, you know, and Jaws, you know, no one can deny that he's one of the all-time great directors. However, that being said, his current track record has been a little spotty. The BFG, Bridge of Spies, not really bringing in the box office totals that people would have expected with a name like Spielberg. And you know, and after seeing the BFG, I am a little afraid. Especially since rumor has it that he's going to take out references to himself in this movie, because he was such a big director during the 80s. You know, a lot of the pop culture, a lot of the movies, you know, were in the 80s, you know, and there's some references to Spielberg and Indiana Jones, most notably in this book, whereas he says, you know, the main character says, well, we ignore everything after Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade because it's crap, essentially. And so, you know, to hear that, you know, Steven Spielberg's going to go ahead and edit this great book and kind of cut that out, you know, I'm really kind of, you know, I look down on that, because it's like, hey, this book was great, there's a reason it's great, and you should try to keep as much in it as you can, especially those, you know, pop culture references from the 80s, which is what this book is all based about, you know, in addition to the technology. So that's what I'm a little afraid of. If he's going to edit that and take himself, you know, referenced out of this movie, out of this book, you know, then, you know, I can kind of sort of understand it, but I mean, it was an essential part of the book, you know, all these little, you know, pieces that are put in there, you know, callbacks to the 80s. Now, other than that, maybe I'm a little afraid also from the effects side. I mean, from what we've seen in the Matrix, what we've seen in all these great movies, the Marvel movies, Guardians of the Galaxy, this has the potential to be an epic like Guardians of the Galaxy. So I kind of wish maybe a younger director had it. Maybe like a James Gunn, you know, the Stranger Things guys, the Duffer Brothers, I think would have been a better choice to get this movie done the way that the book presents. You know, even Edgar Wright would have been great for this, because just look at the adaptation that he had done to, you know, what's that one, Takes the World, not Zac Efron, but, well, whatever it is, you know. But I mean, Edgar Wright would have been a good choice for this as well. You know, as somebody younger, somebody hipper, who might have more experience with, you know, looking back fondly in nostalgia of the 80s, you know, and has more of a grip on the pulp culture of that era. I mean, you know, yes, Steven Spielberg is a great director. Do I think he can do this justice? I certainly hope so. But I am weary, given his somewhat recent track record. All right. Well, again, those are just some of the fears. Also, this book is 30 chapters, 30 plus chapters. So I'm afraid that even a two and a half hour movie just isn't going to do the book justice. Which again is why I think Amazon or Netflix should have grabbed this book idea and made a whole series out of it, much like a Stranger Things, again with maybe the Duffer Brothers. And, you know, the effects have been pretty good for an Amazon show, a Netflix show. And it could have went easily 2-3 seasons, you know, 10 episodes, 10 chapters for 3 years, 3 seasons. I think it would have gave it more weight. It definitely would have given it a better time to develop the story and come with the characters. Because, you know, in addition to, you know, Wade Watts, our main antagonist, or I'm sorry, our main protagonist and hero, we have his friends. We have Artemis and H, which are his friends, which also go ahead and move towards you know, trying to find, you know, the ultimate prize within the virtual reality of the Oasis. And their interaction and connection and story development is key in this book. And I just fear that a 2-hour movie is just going to gloss over it far too much. All right, well, these are just my concerns. These are my fears. Hopefully, when it comes out, it'll still be a Shaka thumbs up, but definitely a strong Shaka thumbs up for the book, Ready Player One. Do yourselves a favor, go to the library, check it out. Wahoo's library, main public branch, has it. Check it out on audiobook, you know. You can, you know, I'm not sponsored, but hey, if audio.com wants to, audiobook.com wants to sponsor me, go for it and check out Ready Player One. Because I know, you know, you sign up for the trial, you can get 1 free book. You can go ahead and do that and listen to this book. It's great. I could not stop listening to it. And as the further I went with it, the more dread I was filled with, because, oh no, I'm coming to the end of the book. It's almost over. You know how it is. It's like, you know, at the beginning, you want to rush through this book. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then finally, you get close to the end. It's like, oh no, I'm almost over. It's almost over. Oh, what am I going to do? All right. Well, Ernest Cline did say he was working on a sequel. There's been no information on it yet, but he said he was thinking about a sequel to the book. So hopefully sometime in the future, maybe when the movie drops, we'll have, you know, Ready Player One, Book 2 out. All right, thank you so much. This is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man, giving you the best book reviews on the island of Oahu. All right, thank you so much, and aloha.